Yo, what's really good, people? When I started this channel, the mission was clear, the mission was simple, the stock market made simple. I wanted to create a home, the first stop for new investors looking to transition from no knowledge of the market to comfortability and a decent knowledge of the market. But why? Well, the underlying reason is much, much deeper. I wanted to create economic empowerment for everyone, and I felt and still feel that the stock market is the single biggest way to create wealth in the long term. Why did I think that? Well, at the time, there were many reports that suggested most millionaires in the world came from real estate and the market. Real estate is widely known to an extent, but can be hard to get into if you don't have upfront capital. Whereas the stock market, you can start building from £1 or $1 and gradually build. Now, to invest is one thing, but to invest responsibly is another. And I believe that there are financial principles we all must know that will shape our mindsets and really enable us to become better money managers and therefore better investors. Which brings me to today's video: how to manage money like the wealthy. On your screen right now, you can see Dr. Stanley Riggs. He's a contributor to the Business Insider and author of the book Build Wealth and Spend It All. And he discusses in this book his philosophy on retirement, how he failed his mum, political agendas related to wealth distribution, etc, etc. So I'm going to leave the link to the book in the description. I'll also leave the link to this actual website in the description, where you can actually hear a snippet here for 4 minutes, and that will kind of give you a little bit of an insight into what this book actually discusses. But between all of that verbatim, he produced 3 flows that for me clearly articulate, in probably one of the best ways that I've seen, how the poor, how the middle class, and how the wealthy manage their money. So in today's video, I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm going to give you my thoughts on that, and I really hope that this can kickstart someone watching to manage their money like the wealthy. So if you want to know more about that, please like, please comment, please subscribe, help the channel get to 2,500 subscribers, and we can get the world of not just investing but managing your money out to more people in a clear, simple and transparent manner. So let's get into the first flow. So figure 1.1, as you can see on your screen, is the cash flow path of poor households. Now I'm going to explain this flow, what is effectively meant by it, and then I'm going to explain my thoughts on it and whether I agree, which obviously I do agree because I'm obviously presenting this to you. So what you have here is earned income, and that is the income that you have to go and work for. This is income that you get in your job. You effectively rent your time out for money, and that money then obviously you can distribute and allocate in a number of ways. However, for poor households, the majority of the money, which is the reason why you can see $3 signs, goes to expenses. It could be rent, utilities, cable, fuel, insurance, entertainment, or unexpected, but effectively the majority of your earned income goes to expenses. Some of your income goes to things you could stop, or you should stop. This could probably be things like gambling or lottery tickets, or bad habits, anything that you're spending that really and truly you just need to stop putting money towards that, because it's not going to help you in any way, shape or form. And then also some money goes into liabilities. Now liabilities could be things like a car payment that you just absolutely have to that you've gone and taken out, so now you've got this as a liability. And what liabilities can also create is additional expenses. So the key thing to note here is that there is a difference between expenses and there is a difference between liabilities in the way that he's communicating it. From a balance sheet perspective, we all know that a balance sheet is comprised of basically 2 things: your assets minus your liabilities, and then what that creates is what your net worth is. So in this example, the majority of the income goes to expenses, some goes to things that you should stop, others goes to liabilities, which then creates more expenses. Effectively, your liabilities is shrinking, your liabilities is growing, you don't have no assets, as you can see here, and the individual in question here is potentially shrinking in terms of they're drowning in sort of managing their day-to-day money in that way. Then you've got figure 1.2, which is the cash flow path of the middle class, and it has rich in quotation mark, which I think is really, really important. Probably the most important thing on here, because a lot of people in the middle class, some people think they're rich. Some people actually are quite wealthy. They earn a lot of income, but because of the way they manage their money, they're actually not that much better off than people within the poor households. There is a school of thought. If you've ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, he mentions in that book that when people upgrade their life, let's say they get a better job or they marry somebody and their combined income is greater, what people often do, not everybody, but some people often do, is they try to compete with their peers. So if they get a new job, then they have to get a new car to match. And if to upgrade from, let's say, the Ford Focus that they have to a BMW or to a Mercedes Benz or to a Jaguar or whatever car it might be, let's say they have to move to a nicer neighborhood or to upgrade their house or to buy a conservatory. But effectively, all of these things cost money. So now the extra money that they've incrementally earned by being really good at their job, by getting the promotion that they deserved, by landing that new job that they really wanted to land, they're not really seeing the benefit of that, because all it's really doing is going into more liabilities in order to make the appearance that they're actually richer than they actually are, but they're not actually being left over with a lot of assets. So if you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I would say that's probably the first self-help financial book I ever personally read when I was 16 years old, and it probably did the best job in framing my mindset for the rest of my life, if I'm honest. So I'll definitely put the link of that in the description as well. But in this specific flow, what we can see here is that from an individual's earned income, when we're talking about the middle class household, they spend some of their money, so it's not $3 signs, it's just two. They spend some of their money, let's say a half of their money or a certain amount of their money that goes to expenses. So again, the same expenses that we've outlined here. What they're not doing is putting money to anything that they should fundamentally stop. So they're not really probably spending their money on, say, lottery tickets as an example. Now, also what they're doing though is spending a lot of their money on liabilities. So in this instance, a liability is a mortgage, it's say a vacation home, it's say 2 cars that they might have in their driveway, it's a boat, it's maybe a all-purpose vehicle, an RV, or it could be other stuff that is really things that they like and they wanted to kind of show off their wealth in some way, but they're actually become liabilities. And as we can see, those liabilities have become additional expenses which basically go into this bracket. So when you look at the bigger picture, you still find the same principle applies. They don't have that much by the way of assets. Some would argue that their home mortgage is an asset. However, if they're spending all of their income going into their mortgage and they're not actually getting any equity or any return from it, then by the literal definition it's not an asset. But obviously with a longer term view, it potentially can be an asset. One quote that was given to me a long time ago by one of my good friends is, the biggest mistake that people make when they buy a house is they live in it, and that basically suggests that the first house you should buy should never be your home that you should then go and live in, because by doing that you then trapped and you're sort of bonded to that house, and you find it very, very difficult to then break out and go and do more things with your money. But we can save that for a whole nother video. Anyway, the bigger picture is still the same thing. They have a lot of income, but it goes to liabilities, which creates expenses. It goes to expenses, and effectively they're not building their assets. They are sailing across, however they are really, really dependent on their job. So if the worst was to happen and they were to be made redundant or they were to lose their job, their whole world could come crashing down. And you see this time and time again, where people that you think are financially stable, people that you think have a decent amount of money, they should be sailing across in life, something happens and then all of a sudden they go downhill. This is the reason why a lot of people that you see are homeless. You can't really just think that they've made bad decisions or they were always homeless or they were always poor. There's a lot of people that were homeless that were actually very wealthy, that were millionaires, that were CEOs of companies, and through 1 or 2 bad decisions, because they weren't managing their money in certain ways, this potentially could be one of their outcomes. And obviously there's millions of people in the world. I'm just saying that some people could have potentially fallen into that trap. Now you go into figure 1.3, which obviously I want you guys to pay attention and, you know, really try and learn from. What this is basically saying is that from earned income, this doesn't say that they have a little amount of earned income. This is saying that from their earned income, a small amount is going to expenses, whether that's home maintenance, utilities, cable, fuel, insurance, entertainment, or unexpected expenses. Now, more money than that goes into expenses goes into assets. And what you can see here, there's income producing assets, and this could be things like property. It could also be things like the stock market. Now, this author specifically, he is more into property and REITs. He thinks property and REITs is probably the best investment, and that's for him to decide what he thinks is best, and he's obviously successful in doing so. But if you were to take my view on this, I would say anything that's income producing is an asset. Anything that produces you income is an asset. If it generates you income passively, it's an asset. From my perspective, that's my definition, but obviously there is a dictionary definition, there is actual literal definitions. But what they're saying is your earned income, majority of it goes into assets. So you're buying properties, etc., but they're going to be income producing assets. And what you can see here is from the property, a large amount of that money, as you can see here, becomes passive income. And that passive income, basically, there's two things that happen to it. The majority of passive income goes back into the investment, aka the property or stocks or whatever it is, and that cycle keeps on repeating itself, and that's where obviously the wealth generation cycle occurs. And a smaller amount of that passive income goes into the liability. So what we're basically saying here is the money that you make from your passive income, you spend X%, let's say 30%, on the things you want to do in life, the yachts, the boats, the holidays, whatever it is that is a potential liability. Now that might create additional expensive, but it's coming from your passive income. So your passive income is going to your additional expenses. Again, it's a smaller amount, but as you can see, that is being paid for and catered by your assets as opposed to directly from your earned income. Now, when you look at the balance sheet perspective, you can see that the person is living calm effectively, because their liabilities are being taken care of by their passive income from their asset generating investments, and they're growing their assets continuously, and the majority of their money goes into their assets from earned income or from the reinvestment of, say, dividends or reinvestment of capital gains or whatever from their assets that they've got previously. And this is how the wealthy households generally manage their money. So I really wanted to just to illustrate that to you. And the reason why I feel it's extremely important is because I shared on my Instagram probably about a week ago a video with T-Pain, one of the first probably artists to ever use auto-tune, and he made, I think it was 40 million, and he lost it all, went down to zero. There's also articles about NFL stars that literally lose all of their money. I think it's probably like the biggest sport discipline where the most millionaires become broke effectively. We see a lot of celebrities becoming broke. We see a lot of people with money that generally fall on it. And I think my personal take on it, and by virtue of it being an opinion, doesn't mean that I'm right. It just is how I view the world, is that the majority of the reason is bad money management because they don't have investments. They generally put their money into things like cars. So in the T-Pain example, he bought a 1.2 million Bugatti. Then he had to sell it for 600 or 800,000 because he broke one of the radiators, and that means he had to replace all four, and it cost too much money he didn't have. He bought like silly properties that didn't make any sense, that weren't sort of revenue generating, that were vacant. He just didn't manage his money really, really well. Jewelry, all of the glitz and the glamour, the stuff that you generally always see. Now, from my perspective, if you're not putting, a decent amount of your revenue, of your earned income into investments, into assets, into things that's going to appreciate, that's going to pay you back some passive income that you can continue to reinvest, you are effectively going to always stay in this cycle where you have to continue to earn income. And if you're not earning income for whatever reason, you can very, very quickly go broke. And in the case of, say, music can be a very time sensitive thing. You're going to have some artists, the likes of, say, Michael Jackson, that, be if he was alive, he would continue to be relevant to this day because he's a legend. But that's going to be very few and far between. The majority of artists, the majority of footballers, the majority of people in life only have a finite amount of time that they can earn income. And once that time runs out, if they haven't started another business or started something that's actually going to continue to generate, or got investments that's going to generate, you can find that income depletes. So I guess my thing to the average Joe that's watching, to the average individual, is that no matter what your earned income is, find a way to try and put a percentage of your earned income into something that's asset generating. Now, obviously, if you're watching this channel, hopefully you're doing the stock market and you're putting it into ETFs, stocks, bonds, commodities, whatever it is, that's obviously going to help you, start along that journey, which is obviously fantastic. And it might be that you're into properties, it might be that you're into other stuff, but I would say focus on this stream and try to put as much as you can into this stream and to put as least as you can into the expenses stream, and also to make sure you have little liabilities. But if you do have liabilities, try and have liabilities that are paid for from your assets. Now you might be thinking, okay, I don't have like 3 properties, so it's not going to be paying for my yacht. Just think of it on a smaller scale. Let's say, for example, this might not be a liability, this might be an expense, but let's say a liability is, say, Netflix costs you, I don't know, £10.99 or $10.99 a month. Try and put, I don't know, let's say £500 into a dividend stock that's effectively going to pay you the $10.99 that will pay for Netflix. So effectively, from your earned income, rather than it going directly into Netflix as an expense or a liability, it goes into your dividend stock, which will always continue to grow, and that dividend stock will pay you the money to pay for Netflix. Now, obviously, you might not withdraw and directly put it into Netflix, but just think of it from an accounting standpoint. You can see that all of your liabilities are covered by the same amount of money you earn from your dividends. Hopefully that makes sense. That is the type of mentality is what I'm trying to encourage you guys to consider. And if you can start to have that mentality with your money, I personally genuinely believe that, you guys will be phenomenal managers of your money, and obviously have a much healthier, wealthier outlook in life. And irrespective of if there's recessions, irrespective of if inflation goes up or down, or interest rates go up or down, or, the government crashes, or we leave the EU, or we stay in the EU, or all of the macroeconomic factors that seem to plague the news all of the time, irrespective of all of that noise, the bottom line is, if you can manage your money well, make good with the stuff that you have, then I think generally you can be wealthy in the long term and in the future. So I'm going to leave all of the links in the description. There's a lot more I want to cover off in the whole, how to become wealthy series. I don't know if I'm going to make this a series or not, but I think this is not really a series per se. This is just something I'm passionate about. I want to make sure that I, put you guys onto as much game as I possibly can. Obviously, do your own research, take it with a pinch of salt, but I do believe that, this isn't unreasonable advice that could, help you guys become better with your money. So listen, hopefully you guys liked this video. If you did, please hit that like button. Please share the video with your friends and family, co-workers, colleagues, whoever. And, please subscribe to the channel if you're watching this and you haven't already subscribed. Hopefully you found this useful, and I will catch you next time with another investment video. Got a portfolio update coming tomorrow. I sold some stocks. I bought some stocks. Hopefully you guys are going to like to find out more about that. Take care, guys. Have a great evening and a great weekend. Peace.